So we've seen that the 212 and 313, these numbers refer to how the adjectives behave in their masculine, feminine, and neuter forms, right? One number per gender. That all makes perfect sense. But now what in the world is this 22 and 33? That doesn't make sense. We only have two numbers and three genders. Well, they didn't ask me when they named these things. The grammarians came up with this long ago. If I had been doing it, I would have called them 222 and 333 adjectives. Now, with that little clue, can you guess what a 22 and a 33 adjective is? Did you guess? Did you guess? Do you get the big prize? Well, I'm sorry, there is no prize, except that the deep sense of accomplishment that you got from figuring this out. 2-2 and 3-3 is actually a pretty simple concept. 2-2 just means that in the masculine and feminine and neuter gender, all three genders, these adjectives follow second declension. And then the 3-3 adjective, of course, just means that in the masculine and feminine and neuter, these adjectives follow the third declension. So in all three declensions, 2-2s follow second declension. And in all three genders, 3-3s follow third declension. Let's take a look. Zooming in a bit tighter then, these 2-2 adjectives will follow second declension in the masculine and feminine. Now we're used to the masculine being second declension, but the feminine, Feminine's supposed to be first, right? I mean, that's the way we're used to thinking of it. So these will look odd to us. Sometimes these feminine adjectives will look masculine because they'll be second declension. We'll see this when we look at an example. The neuter will look normal to us because it will follow its normal neuter form of the second declension. Now, with the 3-3 adjectives, we'll see that these are actually sort of a little more normal to us because we're used to, in the third declension, the masculine and feminine share a form. So that's all that's going on here. And we'll see that that's pretty common in the New Testament, especially with certain pronouns, this 3-3 pattern. Neither the 2-2 nor the 3-3 adjectives are very common. But especially with this 3-3 pattern, we'll see that it shows up with a certain pronoun, which we will meet very soon. Here is a nice, straightforward 2-2 adjective, hamartolas. It means sinful. Now just notice what happens in the masculine and feminine forms here. Os, u, o, on, oi, on, ois, us. Okay, well that looks just like our second declension masculine, right? Os, u, o, on, oi, on, ois, us, right? Okay, so we're used to seeing that with masculine. What we're not used to is this being a feminine form. But that's the odd thing about these 2-2 adjectives. Now let me encourage you, these are not very common. There are only a few of them, in fact. So don't worry too much about them. Also notice that in the neuter, follows second declension, and it's exactly what you would expect. Hamartolan, hamartolu, hamartolo, hamartolan, hamartola, hamartolon, hamartolois, hamartola. Okay, so we're just putting these endings, the normal second declension endings, on the neuter. Okay, so the only real trick to this 2-2 is just understanding that the feminine form will look to us like a masculine form. One of the things that got Jesus in trouble a lot is that he had a soft place in his heart for all kinds of people, including sinful people, including sinful women, shameful women in his culture, who were probably prostitutes. But in this case, a sinful woman is approaching him. And notice how it's written here, a woman who was in the city sinful. Okay, let me just point out parenthetically here, notice the word order is all messed up to us. A woman who was in the city sinful. We would never say that in English, right? We always put our nice adjective before the noun, a sinful woman. But Greek allows you to mix and match words here, okay? And again, it does that by showing us the grammatical connection with these endings. All right, well, let's look at these endings. Gune means woman. And clearly this looks like a feminine ending. But this doesn't look like a feminine ending to us. That looks masculine, second declension to us. But it's not, because hamartolas is a 2-2 noun, and this hamartolas is the form for the masculine and the feminine. So this is a match. Here's another good example.
hamartolo. Okay, this is a dative form, obviously right here. It might be masculine or feminine. So what word does it connect with in this passage? Well, it's when Jesus is saying, whoever is ashamed of me and the of me words in the generation this, the adulterous and sinful. Do you see how strange the word order is to us? You'll get used to that, believe me, but the way that you figure out what's going on is by these endings. So this sinful generation, and normally this would be translated, of course, like this adulterous and sinful generation. That's how we would translate, because we put our adjectives before our nouns. But in Greek, the generation this, the adulterous and sinful. Okay, but okay, now look at the ending. How do we know? Genea, what does that look like to you? That looks feminine, doesn't it? That looks like a first declension feminine, and indeed that's exactly what it is, first declension feminine. This is a second declension feminine. Okay, what? Well, yeah, remember, with the two twos, we have a second declension feminine. So this is the sinful generation, and it does match. This is a feminine dative singular. This is a feminine dative singular. And here is an example of a masculine form of hamartolos. Jesus, again, getting in trouble with the Pharisees. How is it possible for a sinful man to do these signs? That's the big question, okay? But here's the phrase we're after. Anthropos hamartolos. Okay, obviously anthropos is nominative singular masculine. Hamartolos, nominative singular masculine as well. So in this case, the masculine and feminine share a form. Here it's masculine. Okay, so that's the 2-2 adjectives. Let's take a look at the 3-3 adjectives. Again, all that means is that in the masculine and feminine, they'll follow third declension, and in the neuter, they will follow third declension. The word maidzone means greater, and so you can see that it follows the 3-3 declension. Okay, so if you look at the masculine and feminine forms in third declension, they look like this. Okay, we've seen that before. There's nothing new there, nothing out of the norm. And all that a 3-3 adjective does is it follows third declension all the way across. So the masculine and feminine share this form, and then the neuter gets its slightly altered form. And as you can see, the big difference or the strange thing happens in the nominative singular. We've seen that before. Why maidzone? The stem of the word is maidzon. And let me point that out, that the best way to see the stem of a word is to see it in its genitive form, because it usually is just sitting there nice and clear. Well, what happened was they added a sigma, and Greeks don't like new sigma combinations, and so it morphed around and became maidzone. But, you know, it doesn't really matter. Just understand that the nominative singular masculine forms are often strange. The sad thing is that when we look them up in the lexicon, this is the form we'll see. So often what we're learning is the most irregular form. But get used to that. That's part of the deal. That's why it's really helpful if you know the genitive form, because it always follows the rules. So, maidzone, maidzanos, maidzani, maidzana, maidzanes, maidzanon, maidzasi, maidzanas. There, if I can pronounce that. So, following this third declension pattern for the masculine and feminine, okay? And then the neuter follows this column here, and it does it actually with perfect regularity. Maidzon is the root, and so you can see when there's nothing added, well, there you go, right? So maidzanos, maidzani, maidzana, maidzanon, maidzasi, maidzana. Here is an example in context where Jesus is talking about greater works here. Maidzana touton dexe auto erga. Okay, literally, greater than these, I will show to you works. Oh boy, what messed up word order, right? No, not for Greek, only for English, all right? Again, it's important to recognize these endings, because if you didn't know the endings, you wouldn't realize that maidzana is being modified here by works, okay? You can see how the endings work together here. Maidzana, erga. This is a neuter plural, and here's a neuter plural modifier, maidzana. Or check this one out. Here we have, many of you might know this verse, greater love has no one than this, that a man lay down his life for a friend. Greater love, okay? Meidzana agapein. Agapein here is a feminine, of course, noun, and this is an accusative. Well, here we go. This is the feminine accusative right here. So both of these are accusative, singular, feminine. Meidzana agapein. They match. Greater than this love no one has. Just one more before we look at our color-coded text together for some more examples. But here we have God is greater. God is greater than our hearts is this great verse. But this is a use of the adjective that we call predicate, and we'll look at that actually in our next lesson. But the point I want you to see here is that God is connected here with greater. Greater is God, okay? So this is nominative, singular, masculine, obviously, right? So meidzon has to also be nominative, singular, masculine, and that's exactly what you have. So just pointing out over and over again how every Greek modifier, and that of course includes these adjectives, will agree in case, number, and gender with the noun that it modifies. When we come to John 1 and start to look for 2-2 and 3-3 adjectives, we don't find very many. So I've highlighted them. Notice nothing yet, nothing, 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 all the way through verse 12. Finally, in verse 14, we come across one, and wouldn't you know it, it's an odd one. But okay, here we have glory as of the only begotten from the Father. Here's our phrase right here. Para takes the genitive, means from the Father. And here's our adjective, the only begotten from the Father. But what is this strange ending? Well, monogenes is a very odd declining third declension adjective. It's a 3-3 adjective, but you can see these endings are not really what you would expect, especially like here in the accusative singular. That's a really odd plural form. We've seen it before in some other things. Remember, our third declension is the squirreliest of all the declensions here. A lot of it's the same. You have your genitive plural, the seen ending for the dative plural. So a lot of it's the same, but you get some odd things in the dative. So here's the paradigm for monogenes, only begotten. This word genes could be well-born, generation. I mean, it's a word that you'll see a lot, so it is one that you will run into. Sorry to tell you. But notice here, patros, this is a third declension noun, and so this is a genitive form. And here you have your us, that's also a genitive form. So it does match, even though that's a little hard to see, I admit. Okay, well, let's scroll on down. Okay, the second 3-3 adjective we meet here is monogenes again, but notice here, it's the only begotten God. So here, only begotten modifies God, and you can see God here is nominative singular masculine. So let me just squeeze this in here. You can see that monogenes is the nominative singular masculine form. So only begotten, monogenes, theos. It's a match. Okay, so there are two 3-3 adjectives. And as we scroll on down, there is nothing, and I'll just go fast because I know this, until all the way at the end where we run into meidzon. So here we have a form of meidzon. Greater things than these, I will tell you. This is an odd form. So, wow, only 3, but they're weird. This is a 2-2 adjective. Actually, this is an accusative plural form, but it's a little bit of an oddball. Let's not get hung up on it. What I want you to notice more than anything is that 2-2 and 3-3 adjectives aren't very common. Okay, you will see them, and you'll see the 3-3 form, especially with the pronoun here in a little bit. But 2-2 in particular tends to be odd, and you won't run across it a lot. So don't let it worry you too much.
Good for you! You've done it! You now understand all 4 patterns that are used by Greek adjectives to give you their case, number, and gender. Let me ask you a few questions to see how well this has sunk in. Here's your first question. What are those 4 patterns? The 4 patterns are 2-1-2, 3-1-3, 2-2, and 3-3. Here's a second question. Which of these patterns is the most common? The 2-1-2 pattern is by far the most common. The 3-1-3 pattern would be second, and the 2-2 and 3-3 are in there, but they're not all that common. Here's a third question for you. Does the way that an adjective changes shape have anything to do with the meaning of the adjective? The answer is no. It doesn't matter at all if an adjective is 2-1-2 or 3-1-3 or 2-2 or 3-3 as far as the meaning goes. We're just looking at the patterns of change. Remember the word morphology, the way that these words change to give you their case number and gender. Now the case number and gender matter, but the way that the word changes shape to give you that information, that doesn't affect the meaning at all. All right, one last question. What's the advantage of all this morphology? Why not just stick with nice English words which don't morph so much? Well, there are actually a lot of things you could say about this, but I think the greatest advantage to all this morphology is that it allows for great flexibility of expression. Now think about it. In English, remember, how do we get the grammatical function of words primarily? By word order, right? So subjects come before verbs, and if you have a modifier, it has to go right before the noun it modifies. And so you're sort of locked into this rigid way of saying things in English. But in Greek, because every word gives you all this grammatical information, it allows for the words to be spread out and distributed in a lot of different ways, which gives you the flexibility to say things in a much more nuanced way. For example, if you have an important word, you can bring it to the front of the sentence. You're not locked into putting it right there before the noun it modifies or something like that. You have this flexibility in Greek, which allows for greater nuance, greater beauty, and in a lot of cases, greater precision. Now, I get it that right now it's just frustrating. Well, why don't they just put the words in order? They are putting the words in order. Well, here's a better way to say it. They don't have to put the words in order in Greek because all this morphology tells you how they behave in the sentences. And eventually you will see that this is one of the great beauties of Greek. So I understand right now you may hate it, but you will learn to love it. So let's press on.